Call to order the June 13th, 2023 monthly meeting of the Board of Directors for the South Gravel Water and Sewer Authority. I'd like to welcome everyone that's here tonight. Thank you for getting out and coming. And with that, we're go to our roll call.
Person McKellar is absent this evening. Person Jordan is en route. Mr. Karen. Mr. Gooch.
Present.
Mrs. Kaczynski present. Mr. Way.
Present.
Mr. McLean.
Present.
All are accounted for.
Thank you. And if you will, please join me in prayer. Our Heavenly Father, we humbly come before you, thanking you for all that you do for us on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis. Thank you for all our many blessings, and thank you for this beautiful weather we're having. Please guide us and help us to make the best decisions for our customers and for the employees of SGWASA and for the staff at SGWASA. Please look over us throughout this meeting and get us all home safely. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. Join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. Sorry.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And now, is there any adjustments to the agenda? If not, I call for a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion from Mr. McLean. Do I hear a second? Second from Mr. Way. Any discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed likewise. Ayes have it, motion carries. Now, review and approval of the minutes from the May 9th, 2023 regular monthly board meeting. Trust everyone's had a chance to read these over, look them over. Is there any comments or questions about the May meeting minutes? If not, we'll call for a motion.
Motion that we approve the minutes as printed.
We have a motion to approve by Kaczynski, and we hear second. Second. Second by Karen, and any discussion? If not, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed likewise. Ayes have it, motion carries. Did we have anyone sign up for public comments?
Have no one.
Didn't have any by electronic. Okay, thank you. And then we'll move right on. Are there any board discussion items for tonight? Not. We'll move on to our next item is the cross connection ordinance adoption. And I believe our executive director has some comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, directors. This is the cross connection ordinance proposed adoption this evening. The board may recall that at the March 14th, 2023 board meeting, the board of directors approved the declaration of intent to adopt the cross connection ordinance. That was required before we could actually hear the ordinance this evening. And I just want the board and the public to know that SGWASA's cross connection program ensures potable water provided by SGWASA remains safe throughout the water distribution system and is protected from backflow events and undesirable reversal of potentially contaminated water from a customer to SGWASA system. SGWASA presently has 170 backflow devices to manage, approximately 150 public and 50 SGWASA facilities in its inventory. As I mentioned earlier, the board did approve a declaration of intent to adopt a cross connection ordinance. The declaration of intent shall be submitted to each governing body for review and comment. Completed. Following, the authority shall be authorized to adopt such ordinance or amendment to it at any time after 60 days following the submission of the declaration of intent to each governing body. In addition to sending out comments or copies to our participating governments, we also published in the local newspaper and also had the information on our website. So we're positioned this evening to go ahead and move forward and discuss the cross connection ordinance and consider adoption. Staff recommendation, of course, is to approve the cross connection ordinance as found in Exhibit A. The ordinance is quite lengthy. You see from your books. We also provided an additional copy for you, a fresh copy, if you will, at your desktop. If you have questions, I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you may have at this time regarding the cross connection ordinance proposed.
Okay, does anyone have any questions? Okay, no one seems to have any questions, and just kind of for clarification, we had these rules in place, but we didn't have a formal.
That is correct.
And that way this is our formal cross connection ordinance.
Correct.
All right. If there's no questions, any discussion,
A motion that we adopt the cross connection ordinance as stated.
we have a motion by Mr. Kaczynski.
Second.
Have a second by Mrs. McLam. Any discussion on the motion? Being no discussion, we call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed likewise. Ayes have it, motion carries. Thank you. And now our next item is our year 23-24 pay and classification plan update. And that's all right. How are you?
Good evening. I'm Priscilla Adcock. I'm the HR manager here at South Grand Water and Sewer Authority. Everybody doing?
Great. How are you?
Good.
Good.
So tonight I'm here to present the fiscal year 23-24 pay and classification plan. I won't bore you with the details, just hit the highlights. Our entire pay plan has been adjusted to reflect the 5% salary adjustment that was approved by the board as part of our 23-24 budget. The next item on here is during the 22-23 fiscal year came to our attention that one of the jobs, the public information officer, needed to be updated to comply with FLSA. Therefore, the following attachment shows the updated job classification status. If you look on page 31, I highlighted that for you. Change that to an exempt position. And the last item is the request for a new position, the Assistant Finance Director. During fiscal year 23-24 budget meetings with the SGWASA Finance Committee, the Executive Director expressed the need to add several additional employees. Utility plant operators, utility maintenance mechanics, an Assistant Finance Director. Yet the Executive Director suggested that with the new rate model change going into effect July 1st, 2023, it would be best to be conservative with additional operational expenses and to consider additional employees in 23-24. One of the additional positions being considered that's not found on the existing classification schedule is the Assistant Finance Director. Therefore, knowing the Assistant Finance Director's position is a priority to fill in 23-24. It's timely to add this position to the official classification schedule and organization. And that has been added. The Executive Director is in the board approved the attached position classification plan and organizational chart. That includes the Assistant Finance Director. The position may be filled during 23-24. As such, a budget amendment will this position's fulfillment. And the Executive Director's recommendation is to have the board approve the 23-24 position classification plan effective July 1st. Any questions? I'm glad to answer them.
And I specifically, Mr. Chair, would be happy to answer any questions regarding item 2, the request for a new position. If the board have any questions or concerns about that.
Is there any questions?
Everything.
No questions?
No, I don't, I just have a comment. I mean, I see the need for the assistant finance director. I knew when Richard had to be out, a lot of his duties ended up falling on other people. And I'm sure he had to be counseling on a lot of stuff too while he was trying to be out. So
Exactly.
So if we approve this tonight, how long do you think it will be before we can fill this position?
I think that our plan looking forward is possibly advertising this position in the next 90 days. And I would hope within 90 days following the position is filled. So I would anticipate it's going to be this calendar year at some point. That's my best guess right now, just based on the market. So
And your experience as HR manager probably right along with that, right?
Yes, I am.
I know people aren't beating down the door for jobs.
No.
Let's hope this one
It's
does.
a little harder when you get more experience and degrees and things like that, so. But I'm sure we can find somebody.
Mr. Baum, are you okay with this?
I am.
Okay, just checking. Gotta keep you happy.
I
It's
mean,
part of-
if you don't want any help now.
Part of succession planning too, the six.
Absolutely, absolutely. That should-
With the old and with the new.
And I'll still be calling. Even when it's gone. Thank you.
So you need a
Thank
motion,
you.
you need a motion to approve this.
Yes, if there's no questions, no further discussion, we'll call for a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Kaczynski, here second. Second by Karen. Any discussion? Any questions? Then we'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed likewise. Ayes have it, motion carries. And now here's number 11 has been kind of a thorn in our side for a while here.
That is correct. So
Cement thorn.
Yes, it's cement.
ask our utility engineer, Dan Owens, to come up and present this item. Please, Dan.
Sure. Our expenses. Budget went by $23,000. Fundamentally, that was due to significantly more concrete on the ground than we anticipated. The guys worked the next 4 days chopping all of that out. And because of that, they had to keep the generated the pumps on site for 4 extra days. There was also a little bit of difficulty they had in getting the conduit wires cleared out so they could draw fiber optic cable. Everything. And then there was a little cave in part of the road that cost $1,500 to repair. Everything's working fine. I talked to Tony yesterday about it. pH of the water in the manhole is fine, so hopefully everything's been working well all along, and then shouldn't hear anything more about that. So it was basically two things that happened. There were other issues. The things that we learned. 6-inch pipe that came in at first was, it looked round, but it wasn't actually round. So the couplings didn't go on. They spent a fair amount of time trying to reform that pipe. Finally, we bought Hymax couplers that were more flexible, and it was easier to put them back together. But 4 days, considering the size of the project, I don't feel it was terrible. It was a lot of work, and folks were working very hard. We learned a few lessons, but it came out well.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate that. I'll stay at the podium. So I just want to remind the board that we had a contract with HG Reynolds, which was a not to exceed contract. So we have to bring this back to the board to actually get your approval for this expense, of course. We're asking tonight to increase the not to exceed total. You'll see that in the executive director's recommendation on page 35. That's why we're bringing this item back to you this evening. Now, we have completed the work. It was completed in late March, and we have paid the contractor up to the authorized amount. And so we're coming back to the board this evening for consideration to increase this contract as we're requesting. And if the board does that, then we will move forward with paying the contractor the balance.
Any questions, comments? I got one. Is it complete?
Yes, it is.
The hole's been covered
The
up,
hole's covered. It looks nice.
graded grass.
Graded, nice and flat. We had a bit of a hassle getting them to come back and smooth out the road. Did that. And, it actually looks very nice. So
So we're finished with it.
we're done.
Thank goodness.
Yes, sir.
We have a life expectancy on this repair.
Uh, Early potential failure mode that we haven't really looked at as serious is that there's a little bit of crazing on the inside coating of the pipe, but it should last certainly 20 years. It's
Good number.
it's stout, very stout. Then the repairs, the Timex couplers are like, looks like they've been damaged with their monitors. So I don't expect that to come back.
Okay. Good news.
All right. Any other questions, comments? Then we'll call for a motion.
Motion to increase the HG Reynolds Company contract for emergency repair. 23,402.64, not to exceed a total of 190,678.64.
Second. We have a motion by Mr. Way, second by Mr. McLam. Any questions on the motion? We'll call for the vote. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
All those opposed likewise. Ayes have it, motion carries. And now, like Richard's up, our budget amendment 15, wastewater treatment plant emergency pipe repairs.
So this is budget amendment number 15. Fiscal year, you'll see budget amendments 1 through 14 listed in the booklet. They total $2,801,522. I'm going out of the verbiage in this legislative memo because you just heard Dan and Scott explain what the amounts for. This is the budget amendment to make the payment of that final project payment. Wastewater plant. The budget amendment is basically transferring from fund balance $23,403 for the wastewater treatment plant expense line for that project, $50,403. The executive director's recommendation is that the board of directors approve budget amendment number 15 as presented.
Let's go approve. Second. We have a motion by McLeod, second by Way. Any questions on any comments on the motion? Questions? If not, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, likewise, ayes have it, motion carries. Thank you. And now budget amendment 16, year-end adjustments.
There's three year-end kind of adjustments or items on the agenda for finance. The last one is the last budget amendment for the year is number 16. See kind of the summary of that here. We've been talking about this one in the quarterly updates, that revenue is coming in above projected, thank goodness. And of course, the interest revenue is well above projections because of the interest rate hikes. This budget amendment is pretty much adjusting the revenues to the. It's moving a small amounts budget part now around line item to line item. Having no effect on fund balance. And then the other major thing in this budget amendment, as you'll see in the details, is it's reallocating expenses for payroll and benefits. All the turnover and overtime and things of that nature, it's shifting those around. I will make a note also that the board approved bonus for December has a lot of effect on that budget amendment, that part of the budget amendment. This allocates that budget for that bonus in December. We wanted to wait until we got a good idea of what the departments were looking like, because some had some excess, some had some deficits. So luckily, that's not affecting fund balance either. We're shifting budget between departments covering the deficits. So just a brief summary of 16, it's increasing water revenues by 350,000, wastewater revenues by 650,000, non-billing revenues, which includes your system development fees we'll talk about shortly, 187,960, and you'll see interest income is being increased by 650,000. The total revenues are being adjusted for $1,837,960. The expenses, engineering is being decreased by $63,900. Water treatment increased by $21,000. Utilities water line maintenance increase of $124,400. Utilities sewer line maintenance increase of $37,000. Wastewater treatment, a decrease of $15,100. Appreciation board other is an increase of $55,200. And we're transferring to fund balance rather than fund balance, I think the first time this year, $1,679,360. So your total expenditures equal $1,837,960. And the executive director's recommendation is that the board of directors approve budget number 16 and presented. I know there's a lot in there, so if there are any questions, I'll be glad to answer those. It's good numbers. Lots of questions.
Excellent numbers. I am so excited about these numbers.
Any questions, comments?
So if we do hire an assistant finance director, you'll still do the presentations.
I would assume so.
You're not gonna pass that off. I just think yours are much better than, I don't care who it is. I just love the presentations you do.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't plan on disappearing, definitely. But it sure would be.
Thanks, Mike.
Backup, so if I do have a medical emergency, I'm not trying to work, yes, phone and remote.
This is wonderful news.
It definitely is.
Motion to approve. We have a motion to approve by McLeod,
Second,
second by Kaczynski. Any questions on the motion? If not, we'll go to the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed likewise. Ayes have it, budget amendment is approved. Accounts receivable write-offs for fiscal year 22-23. This is an information only item.
That's correct. The board passed a resolution several years ago that allows finance director and the finance department to kind of clean up the accounts receivable period and report those write-offs to the board. Just to reiterate in the resolution, we do use that set off to collect active debts and any debts that we can seek collection of. These are items that have pretty much been disposed that are truly uncollectible. I will add the caveat to that. Occasionally, one of these customers will come back and we will collect that amount unless it's the de minimis. It's $2. We don't seek that collection, but occasionally a bankruptcy will come back in and voluntarily they need to pay for some reason. So we do recapture a small amount of this debt. It basically boils down to four categories that we run into, and that's bankruptcy, deceased, untraceable, and de minimis. Very rarely do we have untraceable because we require so much information up front of the application process so that we can seek that collection. The summary for this year that we are writing out is one bankruptcy equaling $1,367.28, two deceased accounts, $68.24, and two de minimis accounts that total $7.30. So total purges are write-offs of $1,942.82. This is informational only. There's no correction required, but if there's any questions, I'll be glad to answer those.
Anyone have any questions? If not, we'll go on to item 15, capital reserve fund for system development fees designation, and we need an amendment. But
This is another year-end item. Some years we have brought it forward as well. During the year, there were a lot of system development fees. As you'll recall, the general statute change on how you account for system development fees and all of that sort of what the underlying calculations had to be several years ago. And in compliance with that, SGWASA adopted a resolution responsible in August of 2018 to establish a capital reserve fund and capture those fees and designate them to whatever project the board wanted to designate them for. Just as a brief summary, since 2018 through 26/30/2021, all of the SDS were earmarked for the water treatment plant project. That total was $2,346,422. Last year's system development fees for fiscal year 21-22 was $114,973, and that was designated to be used toward the wastewater chemical tank storage. I think that design phase is still underway. Contracting can occur. And this year's collection system upgrade fees is $92,960. They were included in that budget amendment where I said, ongoing revenues. That includes $92,960. We're recommending, the executive director is recommending that the board of the directors approve the amendment to the resolution to designate the collection of $92,960 from system development fees for fiscal year 22-23 be used towards the I-85 sanitary sewer improvement project. Pretty much the SGWASA funded portion of that is not going to be covered by grant or all. And if there's any questions, I'll be glad to answer.
Is there any questions? Any comments? And call for motion.
Approval.
Motion to approve, Karen. There's second, Lamb. Is there any discussion on the motion? If not, we'll go to the vote. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed likewise. Ayes have it. Motion carries. And now,
Emergency, that's the last finance item.
thank you, Richard. Yes. Now for a project status update. And Dan, you gonna update us on projects we got going?
You go to the next slide. All right, Scott, do you feel?
I'd be happy to give an update as we get to that slide. And Dan, if you would speak a little bit louder into the microphone, that way we make sure that we get everything recorded here. Thank you.
Well, you can see from the slide, the major projects that we have going on are the I-85, lead and copper, the pump and check valves at Lake Holt, which are installed happily, and PFAS, which is a long-term complicated project, but it's getting interesting. Chemical storage tanks down at the wastewater treatment plant, sanitary sewer cleaning, and then water meter change out, which is another big project. So we had a 30% design review meeting, and it went very well. I was very impressed with the quality of the work that folks are doing for us. I'll have some nice graphics to show you in August when they do the 60% design review. And Scott, do you
Sure.
mind?
No, thank you. Appreciate that, Dan. So just want to let the board know and the public know that we are on schedule with the I-85 project. In fact, we received the 30% plans right on time, and we are moving towards the 60% design submittal here at the end of August. In fact, we've worked out a schedule with our team at CDM Smith to deliver 90% plans following Thanksgiving this year. So I'll have the pleasure of reviewing plans before Christmas, which is great for us. So we are right on target with this project, a little bit ahead of schedule. I'll remind the board that we've been aggressive with the surveying and the underground surveying that we're doing as well for utilities. And as we're collecting that data, we're actually doing the design at the same time. We're not waiting until the end of all that data collection. So that's what's really kind of helped us speed up the process here. So we're making some great waves with the project there. We've addressed some comments recently by the USDA regarding our application, regarding our preliminary engineering report, a very extensive report that's required for this project and for the federal funding. That's going well. We're still on target for hopefully getting information back from USDA here July, August, as far as how we fare for that, but we're on target for that. We're working on easement acquisition, and we're starting to compile information regarding title research, and overall the project is on schedule. So very happy with the progress that we're making on this project. Happy to answer any questions you might have regarding that.
How are we looking for the Joe P lift station acquisition?
We're right on schedule, no issues, no concerns at this point. And we've had an opportunity in the last 30 days to actually meet with the city of Creedmoor and the town of Butner regarding the application process that's in front of us, any stormwater permits. And we're looking at some applications with municipalities here in late summer to keep us on track for all those requirements to meet the municipal requirements that we have for this very large project. In fact, I had the pleasure this last week of actually picking out the exterior concrete colors and the roof. Not the curtains, but the roof and it. So we're making some great progress. We're way ahead of schedule. So I was quite impressed that we're actually looking at that infrastructure at this point. Yeah, go ahead. Thank you.
On lead and copper rule vision compliance, we had a great meeting with Hazen and Sawyer. The gentleman running that project is John Sawyer. Spent a number of years at Raleigh Water. He's got a very broad and deep knowledge of everything that we do. Luckily, we got supervisors to come and go through the maps that they had generated. And we're able to identify certain areas of town that were likely to not have any copper or lead. And so that project is going along really well. We'll have another meeting soon. And at some point, we'll begin to do some site testing and just getting up to speed on the project. And it turns out that any construction before 1986 is possible to have lead connections between the house and the water main. So hopefully we won't have a huge problem. I've kind of fallen down the rabbit hole on these artificial intelligence search engines, and it turns out that the cities in the United States have most of the problem in the upper Midwest, the Northeast. So we should be in okay shape that way.
Steve, can you speak into that mic for me,
Can you
please?
speak up a little bit louder, please, for us? Thank you.
I should repeat what I was talking about.
You're good.
Okay. All right. Reservoir pump and check valve replacement. We were down to only one working pump and check valve at the lake and a reservoir, which is a very risky position to be in. So happily, the parts came in and they were installed. If you see the big block on the right side, it's kind of elevated. That's an indicator that that shaft is connected to the valve that is being blown open by the water flow. So that raising up like that means that we're getting lots of water. And now we don't have the same risk of losing the pump and losing the whole water delivery to the system. So I feel a whole lot better that that is in place and working beautifully. The generator works well, so we dodged a bullet on that one, and everything looks great and works fine. Don't expect any real problems there. PFAS sampling has been an interesting project to me. I'm learning a lot about it. It's a complicated project. There's a lot of people involved in PFAS. It's a big deal in North Carolina, as everybody can imagine. And had a couple of sampling trips by ECS Limited. They've gone out into the lake and taken samples in other places and have begun to send us the results. I started getting curious about where the root cause of all this contamination could be. So I asked my super smart friend ChatGPT about PFAS and spent ammunition, and apparently that's not a big source. And I said, well, did they ever do firefighting testing at Camp Butner? And they had back in the 40s and 50s, and PFAS was invented in the 30s. So my hunch is, I'm not prepared to say that's a source, but we did redirect one of the samples at the top end of the lake down toward the outlet of the creek that runs straight up to Camp Butner. We don't have the results back. And I thought, well, gosh, what if we find a hot spot there at that to the lake? What do we do? And I thought, well, maybe we can take our water inlet and move it further up the lake. Well, that's going to be expensive. Hopefully, we discovered there is actually a dam at that outlet of that creek, and it's very near the inlet to our water system. So hopefully, possibly, if that turns out indeed to be a source of PFAS, we could begin remediation right there. And we'll see. I mean, I'm not prepared to say that was truly the cause, but it's an interesting wrinkle. It might be that, that's one of the sources of PFAS. Gentleman from ECS, our contact, Ron Navarro, seemed to indicate that landfills don't really generate that much PFAS. It does move through the water table. We've got a fairly shallow water table, 10 to 15 feet down, so it could migrate underground readily. So anyway, it's if anybody's interested in detective work, it's a good one. Okay, does anybody have any questions about that or comments, or does anybody know anybody who's deeply involved? There is a PFAS network. There are many organizations in town and in the state rather. I'm trying to learn about reports. I'm looking for EPA reports and lots of things. Lots of work has been done. A lot of people are working on the project. Probably I'm doing my best to find out what work has been done so far to save time and effort. But it's a real interesting one.
Mr. Chair, if I may, just a reminder to our board and the public that we do have information on our website regarding PFAS, our strategies and what we're actually doing. And what Dan's referring to here on this slide is the testing that the board has authorized for the next year, starting in April, to do PFAS testing, basically an analysis at these sites. So we will have results coming back to us from these tests, and we'll compare those with what we already have from the NCDEQ that we presented to the board in previous months. I'll also note that the board approved for fiscal year 23-24 on our capital improvement schedule, $500,000 that will get us started on the design engineering for project improvements. So we are moving at a very quick pace towards this, and keep in mind that the EPA is still working on a rule with PFAS, and they have some proposed maximum contaminant levels out there, MCLs. And there was a health advisory that was issued, HALs. We all remember that from the EPA previous as well, which really got a lot of attention around the area. So SGWASA is not the only water system in North Carolina or the US or the world that's working on PFAS. This is a huge problem for all of us, but we are being very aggressive. And I just want to update the board again that we do have that information posted out there, and we look forward to continue to march forward with eliminating this problem.
So Dan, you said that PFAS were detected or introduced in the 30s. So it's almost 100 years before we start doing anything about it. That's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I guess they didn't realize how dangerous the stuff is till.
Did you get into the long chain and the short chain PFAS? Because that's another thing. Your older chemicals are considered a long chain because it's so many different chemicals that make it up. And then the more modern ones are a short chain PFAS.
Yeah,
That could give you an indication of the age, because the long chain was, I think it was outlawed in the 70s or 80s.
Not sure, Mr. Chair, but we do have some of that information on our website that we can make available to the public, or make sure that we highlight that well, or provide that information to the board if the board would like some more information. PFAS, we'd be happy to do that.
yeah. I've been trading emails with Jason Mendez. He's taken a real interest in it, and he and I are bouncing ideas back on trading information all the time.
And Jason's our chemist at the water plant, just to update the board on that. So
We're still working with Hazen and Sawyer.
correct.
And Hazen and Sawyer is one of many groups that's working with the EPA on this.
Yeah.
I know we're just a small customer in the scope of things for Hazen and Sawyer, but they are
They're great.
international group.
Yeah, they're fantastic. They're responsive. I'm thrilled to work with them. Every meeting we have is learning experience. ECS Limited is the company that's taking the samples. But I wanted to add too that if we get to the point where we can start to identify remediation technologies, they're not so far out of, they're not so high tech that they're not viable. One is activated charcoal activated carbon treatment. The other is ion exchange, which is basically water softener with specialized needs. The other is basically reverse osmosis high pressure membranes, which is probably going to be expensive, and we don't need to. But my predecessor, well, my former boss, Mark, was talking about activated carbon as the most likely remediation technology. So that's pretty straightforward. There'd be a disposal process for that, but it works, and it's known technology, so that should be fine. Okay, this is, I'm a car enthusiast, and I'm kind of amazed at this new Ford Maverick. We just are getting about the tags for two that came in. They get 46 miles per gallon city driving, and we're going to salvage a couple of old Toyotas that they might get 18 or 20 around town. See an instant cost reduction in fuel, but it'll be interesting. They made it some ratings from there. It'll be fine with what we do. The other technology that is given its instant efficiency improvement is software package that Scott identified. It's called Fleeter, and I thought that it would be mostly used by us to sort of track and monitor in the insurance department. It turns out that they love it themselves because they can figure out where they all are, and they're using it more than we are. What it is, it's a real-time location locator for the vehicles. Each vehicle has a little plug-in in the OBD socket, and it gives out a signal, and you can see where people have gone. You can see where they are. You can you can tell how fast they're going, and I've had to watch this whatever a few times on that. So it's really a cool tool, and it's being used by everybody. And, it's a big time saver. It's trying to track down somebody. I know exactly where to go and where they are. So it's pretty neat. Okay, this is one of my favorite little successes, but it was an interesting project, the Clearwell Repair. We just got notification today that the repair has been accepted and we're cleared. You can see from the first photo, it looked pretty serious. It was all the way through to the water inside. So the DEQ told us we needed to get it fixed right away or we'd be fine and that sort of thing. These gentlemen came in, ground all the concrete out, failed concrete, and took the time to put in new rebar, concrete, and then on top of it a sealant with an expansion joint. You can barely see it. That line that you can see in the rightmost photo is actually an expansion joint. And these folks were very interesting to talk to. They've been all over the world. They've got a contract with the State Department. So after this, they're going to Oslo, Norway, do some work, I guess, at some State Department facility. They've been to Africa and Kyiv, Ukraine, and lots of places. They were just local boys from Greensboro. They were world travelers, but you wouldn't think by looking at them. We're going to do next week on the 20th and 21st a smoke test along Hillsborough Street. It's mostly trailer houses along there, but McGill is going to come out, people out. We're putting out notification to folks. The signs will go out on Friday and door hangers that Crystal developed. They're really nice. We're going to rendezvous at the facility. It says Thompson Gas. We're going to meet there in the morning and put out the signs Friday, as I said, and then following week we're going to actually run the test. We don't know what we're going to find, but the gentleman from Hayes and John said when you do a smoke test, you get stories. So who knows what folks will think when their yards look like they're on fire. They don't even see into the world. I don't know, but we'll find out. We're going to do our best to communicate well with everyone so they know what to expect. And Crystal and I are both notifying the the emergency management folks and the police department, the fire department, so hopefully we won't make national news. Before this job, during the pandemic, I worked at FEMA for a bit, learned all about floodplains, and the wastewater treatment plant is at the edge of a floodplain, but happily, Cody has walked me through their plan for preparing for a flood. We can in fact empty the big, you can see them barely up the hill from the water treatment plant. That's where the raw sewage comes in. They draw down the level of that, process the wastewater as fast as they can. So if it does flood, it's not as harmful as it would be raw sewage. And so I felt very comfortable that we do have a good plan, even though we are very close to a floodplain. It shouldn't cause any damage if, because of global warming or whatever, that we have a 100-year flood. In Baltimore, Ellicott City, my brother lives up there. They had a 2,000-year floods within 18 months. So that's why I'm kind of like oversensitized to the potential of floods. But I think we're in pretty good shape. And happily, there's a hill right at the storage area where the large sewage tanks are. So we could theoretically move documents and computer stuff up the hill. So anyway, I'm working on a bunch of emergency preparedness projects, including I'm going to update, of course, the response plan that's been on file for a while. It needs to be updated. No major changes there. I'm going to create updated contact sheets and have them posted around at various doors in every operation, and make some little wallet inserts for emergency contact numbers. So much to my pleasant surprise, seem to be in pretty good shape. I want to make all of our emergency plans more visible, though. They're hiding on the S drive in various places. So I'm going to go around to all the superintendents and have meetings and show them the plans, where they're located, and do some role playing scenarios so that pretend that we're getting a flood. And let's all walk through exactly what happens. One of my previous places I worked, we were actually in the path of a tornado, and folks might make fun of me, but I really want to have some identified tornado routes. We do here, but at the plants, I want to make sure, certainly at the water treatment plant, there are plenty of places to get out of the way of the weather. There's some very deep stairwells that we can use, but we do have new folks, and I need to make sure that they know what to do in case of a really bad storm. And I've been here since late January, and one thing I have to say is that we've got some folks that are just to me, they're heroes. I mean, Scott has seen them himself. There was a water main break in front of the name of the Nugget store, the Nugget manufacturing plant. And these guys, it was 8 o'clock at night before we were able to get the water turned off, and they're still out there. We finally parted ways at 5 in the morning, and they just kept at it. And they're very dedicated. And he's not in the picture. Joel. Coates. He had come back from, as an example, he had come back from South Carolina visiting his family. And everybody was soaking wet down in the hole, and Joel just got out of his car and just driven for hours and jumped in the hole right with everybody else and said, I don't want anybody else to get hurt. That's why I'm gonna get in there and do it. I thought, my goodness, this guy, it's really amazing. Folks are dedicated. The two guys in the lower left, relatively new hires, and Cam, they're named, and they're in their bunny suits because they were gonna climb down into this manhole where the wastewater failure, the 36-inch wastewater main had broken, and they had to muck out the pipe so that they could put in an inflatable plug. And there are very few people I know that do that. They just went ahead and did it. Cody is up in the upper right. He's the manager of the wastewater treatment plant, and he's a very bright guy. So the folks here are amazing to me and really wonderful. And they're all friends, and it's a beautiful culture.
I like that addition.
Isn't that nice? Stand
I
up.
love it.
I want to highlight these folks. I don't have Robert up there. I don't know if you've ever met Robert Jackson, but he was out there last week with, I think, walking, God knows what. It sounded like he could barely breathe, and we had to determine that there was water available at some properties by the Sonic up there in Creedmoor. He's on his hands and knees in bushes and just going to town, and you know, it is really dedicated. It's fun to see. It's great to work with people like that. You know, they're country folks, a lot of them, and but they're hearts of gold and all shapes and sizes, but they love each other, and it's really fantastic. Yeah, that's really nice.
All right, thank you, Dan.
Thanks.
Any questions for Dan on anything you presented this evening? Right, just a couple of footnotes. The trucks you were talking about are meter reader vehicles. The board approved those replacements. It's taken us well over a year to get those vehicles, but they're finally here. We presented to the board last year also some additional automation for GPS tracking of vehicles. That's all been installed. That was the fleeter system that Dan spoke of as well. So continuing to make improvements across the organization. So appreciate you sharing those projects with us tonight, Dan. Thank you.
And as difficult as those Maverick trucks are to get, I'm amazed that you got two.
Yeah, I am.
Simply amazed. They're just not available.
Was there another truck that we were gonna be replacing that we just couldn't find? Did that money go back into the
I
budget?
think we took that off the schedule. We
Some of them.
couldn't get it immediately, so.
Yeah.
All right. And next item is comments from my executive director.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank the SGWASA team that was here this evening for your presentations. Thank you, Crystal, well, for all the multimedia that you do and for the board secretary work that you do. We bring this year to a close. I just want to thank the board of directors for another successful fiscal year. Honestly, we under your leadership and direction this year, we were able to complete many successful projects. So we kind of bring things down a little bit towards the end of this month, and then it's Happy New Year for us again with a new fiscal year. Richard always gets excited about a new fiscal year. But we're looking forward to a lot of projects. We have a great budget. We have a great CIP schedule, a lot of projects that we're working on. So again, I appreciate board's leadership and direction and helping us to achieve. We look forward to another successful fiscal year coming up, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any comments from our attorney?
No comments.
No comments. And now comments from our board members. Mr. Way.
Sir, I don't have anything.
Okay, Mr. McLam.
None tonight.
Mr. Karen.
Nothing to add.
Ms. Kaczynski.
Nothing except thank you for the great presentations and I love the SGWASA Heroes segment. We really do want our employees to know how much we do appreciate them. We know what they do.
And all I got to say is thank you to our executive director, finance director, engineer, our board secretary. Thank you so much for all that you do. And thank you, all of the SGWASA employees. They're a very, very dedicated group, and we're very fortunate to have them. And with that, do we have anything for a closed session? If not, is there any further business to come before the board? No further business, and we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
To adjourn.
We have a motion by Mr. McLam to adjourn. Do I hear a second? Second by Mr. Way. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say bye. Bye. All those want to say stay, say stay. The byes have it. Go adjourn. Thank you.